Have you ever wondered what Iran looks like in the eyes of someone who's paying her a visit for the first time? What would it mean to a Canadian to visit the tomb of Hafiz? Ms. Krishna Sukrit, a Torontonian, will take us through her journey to Iran. Please welcome her on stage.
Salam. Good evening, everyone. I am truly happy to be here to share my trip to Iran with you. Before I begin my slideshow, I will take a few minutes to tell you about myself. My parents immigrated to Canada from Guyana a little over 41 years ago. I grew up in Toronto with my 5 siblings. I'm married and I have 2 grown boys. I know all about the Persian culture, the ancient history, King Cyrus, the Silk Road, and I could go on and on. I'm a reader. I've been reading since I was 4 years old, and I read everything under the sun, especially Middle East history, because it's so rich and it's so versatile. I have worked with many Iranians since the 1980s, and most of them are still my friends. I wanted to visit Iran for a long time. I just didn't know when it was going to happen. And finally, I made it to Iran for 2 weeks last year in October. Planning my trip and getting my visa was easier to deal with than the reaction I got from friends and family. I have been traveling the last few years, so whenever someone asks me, so where are you going next? And when I said Iran, you can imagine the shock on their faces, and I'm sure some of you are thinking the same thing. I had to calm a lot of people down because all I heard was, what? Why are you going to Iran? You're going to get killed. And the best one was, which was the one I heard most of the time, was, are you crazy? Without any other explanation. When before I left for Iran, I felt like I was the ambassador to Iran because I was constantly defending Iran and explaining to everybody why I was going. My mother's reaction was the worst. I know she worries about me, but when she said that my blood ran cold when you told me you were going to Iran, I was so shocked. I didn't tell her I was going to Iran until 3 days before my trip. I know she worries about me. After all, I am her favorite child. But that was a little bit ridiculous, because we all grew up in the same house. You'd think she would think a little bit like me. So I will begin my slideshow by showing you some photos of this beautiful country and my favorite city, Shiraz. I booked my trip with G Adventures. They're a Canadian company that's a little over 25 years old. They travel to Iran for the last few years throughout the year. So they're a reputable company. I know I'll be safe with them. I also did my homework to make sure I know exactly what's going to happen and ask a lot of questions before I actually get off Canada. Because yes, I do want to be safe. We went to all of these cities that's on this list. And in the top corner, that's our international group. There was 12 of us, 3 Canadians, people from England, Denmark, Singapore, Australia, and New Zealand. And we all had the same dreams. We always dream of visiting Iran, and here we are finally. This photo at the top was taken at the Green Palace in Tehran. The bottom photo is Farzaneh. She was our tour guide. She's a lot of fun, and she has a great sense of humor. She is a walking encyclopedia. She knows the entire history of Iran. When I arrived in Tehran at the airport, I was a little bit worried about the headscarf. I was constantly fiddling with it. I put it on as soon as we landed, just like everybody else on the plane, and it was constantly slipping off. When I did enter the airport and I lined up with everybody else, and I got to customs, the officer welcomed me to Iran, and that was it. They didn't ask me any other questions, and I thought for sure somebody else would stop me and ask me questions, but nobody else did. I finally got my luggage together, and I walked out of the airport, and my driver was waiting for me. So let's begin the slideshow. This first slide is the picture of the Azadi Tower and the Milad Tower. On my first day when I arrived in Iran, I actually went to lunch with a Persian in the north end of Iran, which is actually very different from the south. I felt like I was in Europe. All the modern cars were there, all the high-end stores were there, so of course I shopped. Tourists were all over the place, along with lots of cafes and lots of restaurants. This is one of your favorite poets as well, Ferdowsi. This is actually near the Milad Tower, and this is a copy of the English version of the Shahnameh that I purchased from all places, Amazon, a few years ago. It's beautifully illustrated, and I absolutely love it. We also went to the Archaeology Museum, and it was very interesting to know that all the artifacts that we saw were actually from Iran and not from any other countries. This is the Golestan Palace. This actually reminds me of some of the Bollywood movies I've seen, with the glass tiles all over the building, inside and outside. On our last day, we decided to take the subway in Tehran. So we took the subway from the Azadi station to Taligani station. And the reason we did that is because some of our group, they wanted to see where the US Embassy was. So when we got to the station, we didn't know where to go. We had to ask for help. And we weren't sure if we could actually say to people, this is where we want to go, but we did, and everybody was really helpful. That's what I like about Iranians. They were so helpful and so hospitable. It didn't matter where we went. And they love tourists. People are constantly talking to us, especially in the subway and all the restaurants that we went to. So this photo was actually in the Artist Colony, which is a beautiful area in Tehran. Our next stop after I arrived in Tehran is Yazd. This is one of the oldest cities in Iran. This is a Zoroastrian fire temple, and that fire was burning for over 1,500 years. They actually removed that fire from another older Zoroastrian temple and moved it to this new one. It's beautiful inside. It's actually a museum as well. This is the Tower of Silence, where the Zoroastrians used to do the sky burials a long, long time ago. And beside it is one of the beautiful gardens in Yazd. Some of you, I'm sure you know how beautiful Iran is with all the gardens all over the country, and many of them are UNESCO World Heritage Sites. This is one of the gardens that we went to in Mahan as well. See how beautiful that is? There are flowers everywhere. I went in October when there wasn't a lot of flowers blooming. I can only imagine how beautiful it is in the springtime. And here we are in Kerman. That's one of the domes, which is also a museum. And while we were there, I met a bunch of Ismailis Canadians. They were on a pilgrimage to Iran, and this is my new friend Munira and her mom. So we met them the first day, and then the next day we went to another city because all the tourists basically go to the same sites. They were also there. So we became fast friends because I saw her, I think, about 4 or 5 days in a row. This is the citadel in Rayan. It's a beautiful citadel. Rayan is becoming very popular now since the earthquake in Bam a few years ago where that citadel was destroyed. And from what I've read, they're rebuilding it again. I love this tree. I think this was in Zavaray. It is so wide. You can imagine how old it is. And here we are at one of our picnics. Iranians, I discovered while I was there, they love to picnic. And a lot of them carry blankets and Persian rugs in the trunk of their cars. And they think nothing of pulling up at a sidewalk or a corner store or something, and just sitting there having tea and snacks and sweets. So we did the same thing. We had 2 drivers with us and this huge bus. So our drivers would say to us, where do you guys want to eat today? What do you want to do? And they're the ones who would arrange the picnics for us. And talking about food, I love Persian food. I've been eating Persian food since the 80s. And this is one of my typical breakfasts. In every single hotel we were at, there is a little chef in the back making naan, fresh naan every single morning, because a lot of business people travel in Iran as well. And these are things I never eat at home. I don't eat tomatoes and cucumbers for breakfast. But it was so delicious because they're all from somewhere within Iran. Finally, we got to Esfahan. We did a lot of walking in Esfahan. I believe the square, Imam Square, is the 2nd largest square in the Middle East. There's lots to do and lots to see there. Esfahan is also famous for their bridges. I believe they have 33 bridges, and these are 2 of the famous ones that we visited. One of the funny things I should tell you too, when I get up in the morning, I usually go for walks. And whenever I go for walks, sometimes I do want to cross the road. And as you know, there's a lot of traffic all over Iran, especially in these big cities. And I was standing here in the morning at one of the roundabouts trying to figure out how to cross. So there's a policeman there, and he came and he talked to me. And he actually stopped all the traffic so I could cross the road. So I crossed the road, and I went and I took my photo of the bridge, because I didn't want anybody in my photo. And then when I came back, he crossed me over again. So yeah, so like I said, Iranians, they love tourists. I had a really good time when I was there. And here we are in Jaffa. We went to visit the Van Cathedral, and there's also a museum on the property. We spent about a few hours in this area having tea, coffee, and snacks, and also shopping. There's lots of shopping there. This is the interior of the cathedral. It's so beautiful and so colorful. And finally, Kashan. I can still smell the roses every time I think of Kashan. They sell rose petals and rose water just about everywhere we went. And we bought cappuccino from this food van. And the name of, he actually has a name for that van. He called himself the Shazde Cafe. Here is this square in Gom. I actually don't like the city. It's too conservative, and it's just too religious for me. So we were there for about 2 hours, and it's like, oh, can we leave now? Sorry, I don't want to offend anybody, but it is conservative. This is our last stop in Abyane. This is a village way up in the mountains, and the drive to get there is so beautiful and so mesmerizing. You just don't know what you're going to see at the other end. And Persepolis, I love Persepolis. I've always wanted to go to Persepolis. Persepolis was once a great city ruled by the mighty Zoroastrian kings, and was the center of the Persian Empire. Once upon a time, I read this a long time ago, the Persian Empire was the biggest in the world. Some of the kings, Cyrus the Great, Darius, Xerxes, I just love saying those names because they sound so exotic and so much fun to read about. Persepolis dates back to 515 BC, and it's a real shame that it was burned down by Alexander. Here are more photos of Persepolis. And here is the tomb of King Cyrus. When I went here, it was the day after King Cyrus' day. I believe it was October 29th. And we were told if we had arrived there the day before, they probably wouldn't have admitted our bus, because there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Persians going there just to pay respect to him. Thank you for your time.